Thank you again, Nicole, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Blueprint Virginia Regional Meeting. We're delighted to be with you today. I'm Barry Duvall, President and CEO of the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. And for the last two gubernatorial elections, we have worked with about 100 business organizations across the Commonwealth to put together a blueprint for Virginia's future, focused on how to maintain our economic competitiveness and how to ensure that we remain the best state for business. I'm going to acknowledge a few co-hosts and participants and other stakeholders, and then give you a brief overview of the Chamber and our current economic status and some of the challenges we're facing as we think about putting this blueprint together. And then I look forward to acknowledging the co-chair of the steering committee, Ed Bain, in just a few minutes at the end of my presentation. Also, Nicole's going to show you the results of the survey from Region 4, and then you'll find that interesting. And then obviously we want to hear from the GO Virginia leadership, and I'll be introducing Mark more formally as well. And we'll hear from the business representative, and Monica, I'll be introducing you a little bit later too. And then our partner at VEDA, I'll be introducing Garrett. With that said, we plan to conclude at 1:10. So I will go through this material rather quickly and make sure we have plenty of time for open discussion as we move into that section. So with that, I'll ask Laura to share the screen. I'll move through our presentation. While she's pulling up that screen, I want to say some thank yous. I specifically want to acknowledge our partner in GO Virginia. And again, Mark, thank you for sharing this. I also want to thank Todd Haymore for vice chairing this region for GO Virginia. I want to acknowledge that we've had a great partnership with the Department of Housing and Community Development that helps lend executive professionalism to that, and thank Eric Johnston and Sarah Dunnigan. Also, beyond Mark, beyond VEDA, I want to thank some of the other organizations. We are very closely aligned with the other chambers in the state. This is not just a Virginia Chamber initiative. It's the Hispanic Chamber, and thank Michelle Chajor, and the Asian Chamber, thank Mylan Tran, and also our regional and local chambers as well. I want to thank Brian Anderson of ChamberRVA, and Colonial Heights Chamber, John Brandt, and the Powhatan Chamber, Angie Cable, as well as Daniel Fitzhugh from the Chesterfield Chamber. Thank you all for your partnership in this. I do want to thank a couple of our local regional delegates. We thank you for your public policy support. Delegate Aird, thank you for joining us. And I do want to thank Delegate Willett, who was recognized by the Chamber last fall as a freshman legislator, and thank him for his pro-business positions. I also want to acknowledge from the Hopewell Prince William Chamber, Becky McDonough, and our partners at the Virginia Business Higher Education Council, Don Finley, and one of the members of that board, Jennifer Hunter, who's with us from Altria. Also want to thank our community college presidents for their participation, Dr. Pando from Reynolds and Dr. Seidow from the Richard Bland Community College. Thank you all very much for being a part of it. The regional economic groups play an important role, and I want to thank everyone on here who supports the Greater Richmond Partnership, and acknowledge Jennifer Wakefield. And then our Virginia Tech Foundation representative, the new CEO, Elizabeth McClanahan, welcome her and the work that they're doing, especially supporting our future workforce. Some of our board members are on. I'm going to wait to recognize you later. Alan Witt will bring us a greeting towards the end. He's our chair this year. And also we have a number of leaders involved with Blueprint Virginia that I'll acknowledge as I go through this program. So Laura, if you'll go through this, start with this next slide. For those of you who are new to the Chamber, just remind you that our vision is to be the voice of Virginia business, and along with the regional chambers and local economic groups, as you're the voice of business for those regions, we are honored to be the collective voice of business in Virginia. That's our vision. Our mission is to remain nonpartisan. We are very focused on endorsing ideas and not candidates. And just as a reminder for you, we believe ideas are important. They show up in legislation and regulation and in our judicial branch. And we thank you for helping us shape these ideas for Virginia's future. Next, I'll just share with you our membership growth. We're now exceeding 27,000 members. Every dot here represents one of our members throughout the state. We have over 85 local chambers and an alliance membership with us. And we were able to reach out to about 1 million workers through their employers in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Next slide. Simply stated, our goal is to make sure that Virginia is the best state for business. We want to do everything we can to enhance that. We've got some things to celebrate, and I'm excited to share some new rankings with you. Obviously, you're familiar with the top state for business that CNBC gave us in 2019, but more recently last year, WalletHub ranked us as the number one for public schools in the South, and Smart Asset ranked us number 2 for higher education. Next slide. Business facilities ranked us pretty high, number 2 for business climate, but number 1 in cybersecurity leadership, as well as in digital infrastructure. WalletHub has been doing some rankings. I thought you might find this interesting. We ranked number 5 in innovation against some of the other more competitive states in this space. Additionally, and I think we should be very proud of this as a state, with over 20,000 military retirees leaving the military, we keep about 10,000. Virginia's ranked number 1 in the nation now for best states for military retirees, according to WalletHub. We should be very proud of that and continue to work on it. And number 7 for best state in America for U.S. News, but number 5 in terms of equality, an area that's gotten a lot of publicity lately. And while we have work to do, I'm pleased Virginia is recognized in the top 10% of our states. We had a great improvement in this last year. I want to thank those who support our Team Virginia initiative. In our CEO rankings, we moved from 16th up to 13th. That's 3 spots. I think we have a lot of room for improvement, and we're working on that. But the realization that Virginia is a great state for business is continuing to be recognized. Next slide. Share with you a few slides my friends at VEDP put together because I think they're so impressive. I want to thank Stephen Murray and the board members of VEDP for our partnership in improving Virginia's business climate and creating prosperity for every region. This is a quick look at the data centers. This is why Virginia receives over 50% of the world's internet traffic every day. And this is just an impressive slide. I thought you would appreciate where these data centers are located. We're a world leader in this space. Next slide. We've obviously built our tech ecosystem. We're headquarters to a number of major companies, and we have the presence of a number of major companies throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I know, Mark, for this region, logistics and distribution is very important. We have a large and diverse distribution and logistics system, and this is just a quick bird's eye view of how solid and strong we are in this space, and it continues to grow. So economic development announcements. This is a fascinating look at how your region and GO Virginia has been doing since 2019. The first slide I'll show you, obviously, is just to show the areas within Region 4 of GO Virginia, and you can see that quickly on this map. The next slide I'll show you will indicate some of the priorities we know that Mark will talk about later in terms of advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and emerging technologies and logistics. And then look at these economic announcements that have occurred just this year. And they total almost $200 million and a number of jobs. And if you take a look at the next slide over the past several years, this is over $1 billion, well over $1 billion of economic development announcements. And while that's a lot of money, I think you should really be proud of the balance between new companies and existing companies. A lot of new companies have come to this region because of its business-friendly climate and many other assets. And I think this bodes well for Region 4 and GO Virginia. So our blueprint is the foundation for our legislative initiative, and our blueprint is developed every time there's a governor's election. The first one we presented to Terry McAuliffe 2 weeks after he was elected, so he's very familiar with the Chamber's initiatives and worked with him closely during his term. The next blueprint we presented to our current governor, who we have been working with closely on business initiatives, and this is Blueprint Virginia 2025. We built Blueprint Virginia 2025 on these areas of economic competitiveness. I'll give you a second to look at them. While it's not completely comprehensive, and there are sub areas within a number of these, It is important to recognize these as non-competitive areas and to have initiatives around each one to ensure our state remains competitive. Our national rankings have been improving since we've been advancing the blueprint. Obviously, sequestration had a big account for why we fell from 2009, but also the financial recession. And as we began to work with administration and members of the General Assembly on both sides of the aisle, we've seen our national rankings climb back up to the top where we belong. Next slide. The question, I think, for us in the business community across the Commonwealth is, what does the future look like? What do our future legislative General Assemblies bring to us? What do the national rankings say about our business climate? And I think we're at an inflection point in the Commonwealth of Virginia. If you look at some of the legislative trend lines over the last couple of years, we've seen threats to our business climate. If we were able to implement all the recommendations in the blueprint, we would be a top 5 state. Only some of them being implemented, we would be a top 10 state. But if we have a majority in the General Assembly that don't support business initiatives and aren't aware of the fundamental building blocks of business climate, we could be in trouble with our rankings. And so it's our responsibility to make sure we present a unified voice as to what makes Virginia's business climate competitive and how we can demonstrate that that's good for all Virginians at all levels. And I think we can do that in a way that is bipartisan this year. Next slide. What are some of those economic challenges that are facing us? I'll run through a few of them with a historical perspective in mind. The first is this recession was unlike any other. If you look at the 1990 recession, it took a while to get into it and a while to come back. If you look at the 2008 Great Financial Recession, the green line, we went into it and came back out in a matter of less time than the first. But if you think about what's happened in trying to solve the international health crisis by shutting our businesses down, we plummeted into a recession and we're beginning to come out of it in a very rapid way. And this will be unlike anything we've ever experienced in the past. And it's created different pressures on our business climate nationally and on our business climate in Virginia. Next slide. Some of those national statistics are staggering. 8 million jobs, 12 billion in benefits paid, 1.5 million Virginians filing for unemployment rate, almost 1 in 5 of our population, and obviously significant increase from previous years, and small business were hit the most. We know that leisure and hospitality nationally was the most impacted in the job economy, and some would say non-essential retail was also equally impacted. Next slide. Our Virginia numbers parallel the national numbers in terms of leisure and hospitality both being significantly impacted and non-essential retail. But we know those are coming back now. Next slide. So just for example, tourism and hospitality in Virginia is a significant employer, but that industry lost about 45% in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Travel dropped 30%, and significant billions of dollars lost in revenue. And now we're facing some unprecedented staffing shortages, significant increase in labor costs, and wages nearly doubling the average of statewide hourly rates. Signing bonuses are now routine and for workers in these industries. The unemployment insurance claims nationally were just staggering. This bell curve tells the story from March of 14th, where we are from last year to this year. And then the next slide will show you how Virginia has fared with unemployment. Record low levels in February of 2020 and competitive levels today, and it's getting better every month. Not all regions in Virginia were impacted the same. We had this slide put together to show you the level of employment change from February of 20 to April of 21. The dark blue areas are the more severely hit. And you can see Central Virginia and many of the areas in your GO Virginia Region 4 were significantly hit, especially leisure, hospitality, and that outward-facing economy. Next slide. And then graphics also do a good job of showing Virginia has done better than the nation. When you look at these numbers of unemployment, Virginia has fared a little bit better than the rest of the nation, Virginia being in the dark blue line. And then we asked VEDP to work on a projection of coming out of this recession and what does it look like to get back to full employment. Currently, we're looking at the first or second quarter of 2022. And then if we divide that between the urban crescent and the rural areas of Virginia, urban crescent's coming out more like the first quarter of 2022 and recovering, and the rural horseshoe areas of the Commonwealth more like 2023. So behind in terms of recovery of employment. Next slide. We also know that the economic shock did not evenly hit all of our fellow Virginians or people in this country. Those who had higher education, those who were in knowledge-based economy fared better, and those who did not fared worse. And you can see here on this slide sort of how that has impacted workers based on economic profile and educational profile. Next slide will show you how it has also disproportionately impacted different populations within Virginia. And as we build the blueprint for Virginia 2030, we need to be sure that we are thinking in terms of equity as we put forward proposals and plans going forward. And we know the number one issue facing our businesses today, beyond regulatory issues and rising healthcare costs, is the impact of the workforce. And a skilled workforce is essential. Last year, I was having breakfast this morning with the president of a university. The national number is about 700,000 fewer enrollees in higher education. And we've seen that trend also in Virginia community colleges. So we want to get people back in the stream of education and make sure that we in this state are the best state for higher education and for global talent. So how do we do that? We propose that we collectively work on this process. I was speaking in Hampton Roads earlier this week, and I responded to a question when they asked me why I'm going through this blueprint process. Why didn't we just do it on our own as a chamber? I said, well, we could do something quickly on our own, but if we wanted to do something that was going to last, we were going to need partners. And that's true in just about every endeavor I know of. And working with partners builds a deeper, wider, better platform. And with over 100 business organizations and thousands of business leaders involved in this process, we can present a united plan as to how to develop a plan for Virginia's future. And thank you all for participating today. Almost 300 of you have signed up to be part of this program today. The process includes regional meetings where we are now. We also have executive committees and signature events and strategic partners. And our steering committee and advisory board, who I'll recognize in a few minutes, will be a very big part of finalizing this before our board of directors votes on it in October, and we present it to the incoming governor in December of this year. Next slide. So that's our timeline. I quickly covered that already. We're in the middle of our information data gathering and input. We want to make sure we hear from you today, and we'll be sure to present all these recommendations to our board of advisors and our steering committee for full release of the blueprint in December of this year. Next slide. Thank you for participating in this regional meeting. We've been partnering with the GO Virginia regions, and you can see the progress that we've made. And if you want to participate in other input sessions, both in the surveys and in the virtual meetings, please feel free to sign up. And again, mark your calendar for December 3rd. We very much would like for you to be, we believe we'll be in Richmond at the Convention Center in person, where we will present and unveil the details of our Blueprint 2030 plan. I do want to acknowledge and thank our steering committee and advisory council. I'll introduce Ed Bain in just a minute. But we're very grateful to Ed for co-chairing this. Jim Dykes on our advisory board, former Secretary of Education. He's with us today. John Newby's with us with the Biotech Association. Again, these are people who have signed up today to be on this call. Liz Povar with Riverbank Link Group, and Deidre Trent, who's co-chairing our Workforce and Education group, and Jennifer Baird, who is sharing that responsibility with her. And many of you know Deidre is a former Secretary of Education, now with George Mason University, and Jennifer Baird with Altria is co-chairing that initiative as well. I want to thank them very much for being on this call today. We can give you a full list of steering committee and advisory board members later if you'd like. Next slide. Obviously, these business logos here represent those who are investing in Blueprint. I want to thank each of these companies for their investment and their support of putting this blueprint together and advancing this and as a nonpartisan document to help be the voice of business on issues of economic competitiveness. Next slide. And now I'd like to thank Ed Bain. I acknowledge Nasik Keen is the co-chair with Ed of the steering committee. Nasik is the CEO of SAIC, a multi-billion-dollar company headquartered in Northern Virginia. And many of you in this region, of course, know Ed Bain as president of Dominion Energy Virginia. Next slide. Ed, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership of Blueprint, and I'd like to turn it over to you for your remarks.
Thank you, Barry, and I'm honored to be with you here today to talk about the strategy for moving GO Virginia's Region 4 forward. And I'm proud to serve as co-chair for the Chamber's Blueprint Virginia 2030 with Nasik Keen. And as you mentioned, I guess over 10 years ago, Virginia stood at the top of the ranking as the best state in America to do business. Then we started to fall behind. And we may have kept falling if the Chamber had not launched the Blueprint Virginia 2025. And by developing a business plan in the Commonwealth, we reversed that trend. And I think all of us know what it takes to build a strong economy, regional collaboration so that we can share in prosperity and grow together, a strong education system so young people grow up ready to enter the workforce, sensible regulation so nimble companies can act swiftly in a fast changing world, and a manageable cost of doing business. And Dominion Energy is doing its part through competitive rates coupled with great reliability. We're supporting the business community in other ways too. We know our business customers increasingly want green or clean energy, and the Virginia Clean Economy Act will enable us to build gigawatts of new solar, wind, and storage. We're also helping to build, to bring high-speed broadband to Virginia's rural communities so that they can compete on a more level playing field as well. And we're working with community colleges to train the energy workforce of the future. And we're innovating every day because we know we have to be better tomorrow than we are today. And I look forward to hearing some of the innovative ideas to come out of today's discussion. And I thank you again for the opportunity to say a few words. With that, Barry, I'll turn it back over to you.
And thanks again for joining us and for your leadership on the steering committee. I'd like to acknowledge Nicole Bunce. I recognized Nicole earlier, and Nicole is going to share some of the results of the survey before I introduce Mark. Nicole?
Thanks so much. And Laura, if you could share the presentation, I'm going to quickly go through this. And I am actually just going to touch on the high points of the survey results, but please know you're going to receive this full PowerPoint this afternoon. And if you have any follow-up questions, let us know. One thing I do want to plug is if you haven't had an opportunity to participate in the Region 4 survey, it is not too late. We're going to keep the survey up for an additional month. In my follow-up email, I'll be sending that link as well. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. As Barry mentioned earlier, we have many different ways that we're going to be surveying members of Virginia's community. By participating today, you're engaging in our regional meetings, but I also want to highlight that we do have a statewide survey on our website. I'm going to ask a member of our team to put the link in the chat. If you haven't participated in that survey, we hope that you will as well. This one is region focused, and we're hoping that you'll also be willing to participate in the more comprehensive survey that is on our website to represent all regions of the Commonwealth. Next slide. So the first question was, Virginia's economy is headed in the right direction. 14% strongly agree, 58% agree, 19% were neutral, 9% disagree. I would say that this is pretty complementary to the results that we've seen in regions 1 through 3 so far. We usually see about over 50% agree or strongly agree that we are headed in the right direction. Next slide. Virginia is doing a good job preparing the workforce that businesses need. Again, 2% strongly agree, 43% agree, 36% neutral, and 17% disagree. That neutral and disagree numbers mean that there is more work to do in preparing our workforce. Next slide. Virginia has an environment that encourages entrepreneurs and businesses to innovate. I'll note again, 36% neutral, 11% disagree. Again, this is another area that we need to continue to highlight and foster to ensure that entrepreneurship is one of the priorities that we're investing in our current students and future workforce. Next slide. Which are the areas you believe have the most impact on Virginia's overall economic competitiveness? If you participate in the survey, you know that there was a laundry list of about 20 different areas of focus throughout the Commonwealth. In every region we've been in so far, and as well in the Blueprint Virginia 2025 process when we surveyed, number one issue always is workforce and education. Number two is business climate. Again, that was consistent in regions 1 through 3 as well. Number 3, innovation and technology. And then for 4, it was a tie between transportation and housing. Next slide. If Virginians could make additional investments in education and workforce, where should they go? Number 1, across all industries, so all regions so far, is internships and apprenticeships. Number 2 is K through 12, and number 3 is early childhood education. I'll note that in our other previous regions that we've been in so far, this is consistent. Next slide. Where do you think Virginians should be concentrating its infrastructure investments? Number 1, broadband. Number 2, transportation. And number 3, water sewer. Next slide. What is the most important component of healthcare to businesses and their workforce? Number 1, affordability and total cost care. Number 2, quality of care. Number 3, accessibility. Next slide. What is Region 4's greatest barrier to affordable and quality housing? Number 1 was low inventory. Number 2 was zoning restrictions. And number 3 was other. And we really appreciate people going beyond if they didn't see the answer represented in the survey to provide us with some recommendations that will be incorporated in the Blueprint document. Next slide. Which of these tools will be most helpful for your business to encourage hiring veterans as they transition? Number 1, standard definition of military skill sets that translate to civilian industries. I'll note that this won by a landslide. So this means this is definitely something we need to continue to work on and hopefully will be a recommendation in Blueprint. Next slide. For Region 4, what is the most important potential infrastructure investment? By a landslide, increased broadband. Number 2 is school, and number 3, additional business-ready sites. Next slide. For Region 4, what is the most important industry for continued growth? Number 1, with information and emerging technologies. Number 2, healthcare and biosciences. And number 3, advanced manufacturing. Next slide. Just as some reminders, we hope that you'll save the date for the Virginia Economic Summit, as Barry mentioned, on December 3rd, where we'll present the final document to the governor-elect. And in between that, we hope over summer you'll participate in the statewide survey that a member of our team just linked in the chat. Again, all this information will be sent to you this afternoon. We appreciate your participation. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Barry.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you all for participating in the survey. And we are pleased to partner with the Growth and Opportunity organizations throughout the Commonwealth. It's my pleasure to recognize Mark Horrigan. Many of you know Mark and his leadership in Hampton Roads, or excuse me, in Central Virginia, but also on the board for the Richmond RVA and his leadership there, and Horrigan Construction. But Mark's been a real leader over 30 years in economic development, construction, commercial development. I want to thank you, Mark, for your service on our board at the State Chamber and for your leadership in GO Virginia. And thanks, GO Virginia, for its partnership. I'd like to turn it over to you for a few minutes. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. Thank you, Barry. And thank you to everyone who's called in today. And I'm really pleased to share some highlights and updates on Region 4. I am joined today by Wilson Floor as well, our CEO, and I believe Todd Haymore, our Vice Chair, is on the call as well. So when we get to the Q&A session, be happy to address some of those questions along with some of them. And so what we've done, and Wilson and his team put together a very nice slide deck for everyone to give you an overview of Region 4. So if you go to the next slide, Barry did a great job at the beginning of this presentation showing you a map of our region. But for those that may not be familiar, it includes the Richmond Planning District, the Crater Planning District, and we extend from Hanover all the way down to Greensville to the North Carolina border, and from Goochland to Surrey. So it is a wonderfully diverse region. And with that comes strengths and opportunities and some challenges as we try and serve all of those areas. But I really credit our entire board for looking for ways to create opportunities in each of those areas. And if you look at the history of awards that we have been able to hand out through the GO Virginia program, our entire region has benefited from that. The very interesting thing across all this diverse area is that we have very common economic development interests that, much like the polling data showed, workforce development is a key issue in all areas, looking at that skill gap and how we can close that gap. And then areas of advanced manufacturing and looking at how we can take advantage of the region's really well-positioned location with our interstates, our port system, and where we sit in the state, along with the state capital, the Federal Reserve district that is here. We have a lot of very natural benefits that we can leverage. So next slide, please. So speaking of those strengths, we see obviously that very diverse economy that I talked about across all sectors, public, private, and a wide variety of industry sectors. We see some really strong strengths in our bioscience area, logistics, information technology, the data centers that Barry highlighted earlier, and our advanced manufacturing. Another really interesting part of our region is some really strong entrepreneurial growth. Our small business growth in this region has outpaced the national average, and we have a great quarterback and activation capital that partners with Startup Virginia, Lighthouse Labs, and numerous other entities to really foster that entrepreneurial hub and how we can get some of those businesses going. And we have VEDP, as you know, did a great job characterizing over 400 sites in our Commonwealth. And the Region 4 area has the largest number of developable sites in the Commonwealth. And we see that as a tremendous opportunity for this region. And then we have great partners doing wonderful research at VCU, VSU, CCAM, CCALS, and many of the other colleges and universities. That incubator hub and that talent that we have in the education area forms a great underpinning to our workforce, and we need to go ahead and leverage some of those. Next slide. The opportunities we see in our area is developing a nationally and globally competitive cluster of pharmaceutical manufacturing. As many of you know, the Flow, Civica, AMPAC announcement in the Petersburg Crater District is a wonderful boost to our region, and the opportunity, I think, to springboard forward and really leverage the movement that has taken there. As I mentioned, because we have that large number of sites, upgrading those to be business-ready sites along with our major highways, the port, and other things we can do, I think will put us in a very strong position to strengthen our region. Continuing to enhance that entrepreneurial ecosystem that we talked about. And then lastly, a comprehensive build out of our talent pipeline. We're seeing great partnerships at the high school level, the community college level, our four-year colleges and universities, along with private sector institutions that are driving some of that. But what's also great to see in our region is you look around some of the community organizations of different types, from the Management Roundtable, ChamberRVA, the Community Foundation, and many, many others, all working to tackle this problem in a very cohesive and comprehensive way, is a great strength of our region. Next slide, please. Our high growth potential industry sectors and the reasons that they were selected, I won't go through all the reasons, but as I mentioned, the pharmaceutical manufacturing. If one thing that the pandemic pointed out is our over-reliance to manufacturing or some of our raw materials in the pharmaceutical area were coming from offshore, many from China. And so the opportunity to reshore those here and to grow that pharmaceutical manufacturing cluster, we think is a tremendous opportunity in the Central Virginia Region 4 area. And it fits very nicely with our next area, which is our biosciences and information technology and entrepreneurialism sector. These things kind of go hand in hand, and with the infrastructure that we have in place, we see this as a great high potential opportunity. And then our logistics and advanced manufacturing strength, given the interstate system, given the port, given our physical location and the number of households and businesses that can be reached within a one-day's trucking drive from this area, gives us a tremendous advantage over many other parts of our country. And certainly it's an area that we want to continue to explore in Region 4. Next slide. And where we see investments being needed to support our growth, just like what the polling data showed, workforce and talent is a #1 issue for us as well. I think we can leverage some of those institutions that we have here producing phenomenal students. Our infrastructure, from water, sewer, transportation. We have a pretty good backbone here. The opportunity to improve that with a new regional transportation authority in the greater Richmond region, I think will allow us to move some of those things forward. And then the site development, as I mentioned earlier, continuing to upgrade those sites, I think is a really wonderful way to do that. And if I think about our workforce and talent, again, when I look at what we do with Virginia ChamberRVA, and what they're doing with RVA now and trying to retain the talent that's here, it represents, again, great cohesive work and cohesive thinking in our region. We have great partners in which to take some of those things on. Next slide. And then our last thing here is our critical post-pandemic challenges and opportunities facing Region 4. Certainly workforce challenges are there. It simply has exacerbated what we know is an already difficult situation. Our tourism, our hospitality and leisure industry, particularly hard hit in trying to get workers that are trained and ready to work in that area. And we are continuing to focus on those. Reshoring manufacturing, we think, is a tremendous opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, and our opportunity to take and leverage our great resources here and bring manufacturing here, which brings great paying jobs, as well as stability and control of our destiny, we think is a wonderful thing to do. And then lastly, I'd mention our interregional cooperation. We have great partners surrounding Region 4, and we have worked very closely with them. The Hampton Roads group and RVA 757, what we are doing there, looking west to Charlottesville and the region out there, we are seeing great conversations and great opportunity. And our board and our staff at Region 4, very committed to advancing those things going forward. So Barry, that's a quick overview, and I'll defer questions to our Q&A period when you're ready.
Mark, that's a great presentation. Thank you for what GO Virginia leadership is doing in Region 4. And just as a reminder, if you all have questions of me or Mark or other presenters or want to make comments, use the Q&A feature there on your screen, and we'll be turning to public comments in just a few moments. First, I do want to thank VEDA, the Virginia Economic Developers Association, and recognize Garrett Hart. Many of you know Garrett from his leadership in Chesterfield County of Economic Development. He's also been a leader in VEDA across the state. I've been on a number of initiatives with Garrett. Thanks for your partnership today. I'd like to turn it over to you to say a few words on behalf of the VEDA.
Thank you, Barry. Good afternoon, and thanks to Barry and the Virginia Chamber for continuing to work to develop the blueprint for Virginia. It is my pleasure today to represent the Virginia Economic Developers Association, better known to everyone as VEDA, as well as the economic developers across our region. Today's conversation promises to be a productive discussion for the future of business in the GO Virginia Region 4 and across the Commonwealth. As you know, VEDA is a strong voice for shaping economic development policy in Virginia. We also strive to be the leading source of effective education and networking for economic development professionals. Now more than ever before, economic development is everyone's business. Looking back over the past year at our shared experience with the pandemic, I think we can all agree that it is critical that we do everything in our power to get all Virginians back to work and to invigorate the Commonwealth's economy. VEDA's public policy platform aligns with that primary objective. Specifically, we recommend policy and budget actions in three main areas. First, having a skilled and available workforce. We are absolutely convinced that the future of Virginia's economic development success is the ability to attract, develop, and retain talent. VEDA supports the Virginia Jobs Investment Program, better known to many of us as VJIP, and the Virginia Talent Accelerator Program, two complementary efforts that provide economic development projects with critical workforce training support. VEDA is also in favor of additional funding to build on the success of the Workforce Credentials Grant, also known as Fast Forward, a pay-for-performance initiative that creates and sustains a supply of credentialed workers to fill occupations where demand outstrips supply. The second major public policy focus area is promoting economic prosperity for all regions of Virginia. To be competitive, we must have fast, reliable ways to move people, goods, energy, and information to every corner of the Commonwealth. VEDA supports increased funding for the Virginia Business Ready Sites program and other efforts to prepare viable sites for businesses looking to locate or expand in the Commonwealth. Minimizing time and the mitigating of the risk to the path to market make all the difference in today's fast-moving and competitive environment. VEDA also supports funding the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative, as well as maintaining funding for GO Virginia. The third major public policy focus area is developing tools for competitiveness. We must strengthen and grow our economic development toolbox through our existing incentives, sound tax policy, and the state's marketing program with support for community revitalization throughout the Commonwealth. As we continue to make strides in these policy-related areas and consider priorities for Blueprint Virginia, we are confident Virginia can lead the nation and consistently rank as the best state for business. Thank all of you for gathering today to have this important conversation, and I look forward to showing the world how resilient our economy can be when we all work together. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Garrett, and thanks to VEDA. Want to have a comments from a local business, obviously not small business, but I want to recognize Monica Schmoody. Monica is with Cigna as the Mid-Atlantic Regional lead here as president. I also want to thank, on behalf of the Chamber's Board of Directors, Kimberly Robinson's for her service on the Blueprint Advisory Board and Lee Hanna's service on our board. So Monica, I want to recognize you for a couple of minutes to give some comments on behalf of the business community. And then for everyone else, I'm going to start opening this up for public comments in just a couple of minutes. So Monica, welcome.
Thank you, Barry. On behalf of Cigna, it is my honor to be with you all today. Proud to be part of the program alongside of our partners that you already mentioned, the Chamber from Chesterfield, Powhatan Chamber of Commerce, Colonial Heights Chamber, and ChamberRVA. Now, we've all seen the impact of COVID-19 and the impact that it's had on our lives and our livelihood. What I know is that healthcare continues to be at the forefront. That's why it's really important for Cigna to want to be a part of this program and ensure that healthcare is front and center of all of our policy discussions. Now, you may all know that Cigna is a global health services company with strong ties to this community and the Virginia Chamber. We also have 400 employees in our Richmond offices and 1,400 throughout the region. Our dedicated team manages the benefit plans for hundreds of thousands of area residents through our commercial employer-funded health plans. And we also have ACA Healthcare Exchange offering individual and family plans, and seniors are covered by Cigna under Cigna Medicare Advantage plans. So as a longtime supporter of the Chamber, Cigna's been a proud partner on a number of initiatives. You mentioned Lee Hanna serving on our Chamber's Healthcare Committee, also Kimberly Robinson involved. And then our Senior Medical Director, Dr. Christina Stashuk, recently spoke at the Virginia State of Healthcare at their event and talked about the social determinants of health impact in our community and also health equity. So we know at Cigna that Blueprint Virginia 2030 provides a unique opportunity for leaders from all regions and industries across the Commonwealth to come together, to roll up our sleeves, to work collaboratively, and to develop a statewide strategic plan that promotes economic resiliency and growth. So I look forward to participating in today's discussion. I look forward to the continued conversations that we'll have over the next 6 months as we develop that final document. And I want to thank you, Barry, and the Chamber for facilitating the conversation today. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. And for those who are on the call, again, we have about 300 of you on here. I want to just take a point of personal privilege and say, I'd like to extend our time to 1:15 if we need to do that. We want to hear from as many as possible. And we want you to be thinking about the discussion questions. What would be the most important improvement your region could make to help it grow and prosper? We've heard some great recommendations so far. And what is the priority of your region that we should include in Blueprint? Again, great recommendations so far. And to start the regional input from the greater audience on our call, I want to ask Brian Anderson, the CEO of ChamberRVA, to chime in. Brian, let me acknowledge you and thank you for joining us. And I know our communications team will figure out a way to promote you so you can speak to us.
Good afternoon, Barry, and everyone else on the panel. It's been a wonderful start to this conversation. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. And more importantly, Barry, for your leadership and the Chamber's leadership and going through this process. So one of the first things I did moving here was to see the Blueprint 2030 plan, and you educated me on it. It was a wonderful document to help me get caught up to speed. We're just proud to be here to be your co-host. I echo the comments made by Mark, our chairman, also Garrett, working with him on local economic development. We've got a lot to be proud of, a lot of work still to do, and we're just happy to be with you here for this conversation.
Thank you so much for your leadership in the region and the partnership that we have between the state chamber and Richmond RVA. I'm going to ask Nicole to help me navigate others that may want to speak, and I know that she has a list of them that have been emailing or texting her. Nicole, who would we like to call on next?
Yes, and Connie Long is going to be next. I have just promoted you as panelist. You should be able to unmute yourself and turn your camera on if you would like to, and address everyone. Connie, maybe while we wait for you to do that, I'm going to go ahead and start on some of the questions in the Q&A. So we have a question saying that while Virginia continues to remain a business-friendly state, what can we do to help promote initiatives that will foster a greater environment for workers as well?
Nicole, thank you for asking or for reading that question. We very much value the workers in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I know a couple of years ago, there was a study that was released that indicated Virginia's workers were not ranked as high in terms of friendliness. One of the things I remember about that study is that 25% weighting was given to whether a state has $15 minimum wage or not. That was like 25% of the vote. Since that time, Virginia General Assembly has in fact taken steps to move Virginia higher in the minimum wage area. Another was from a perspective of relationships with unionization. I would say Virginia has a great relationship with unions across the Commonwealth. They are a big, important part of our workforce. We are one of 27 states, though, that allows individual employees to join a union of their free will or not to join. And the General Assembly and the governor has affirmed their support for that, but that did provide a lower ranking. So those two alone put us below 50% on that ranking. But overall, I think the educational opportunities for workers, the workforce training initiatives that are in place, the increase for health insurance, all of those things have really led to improved worker environment. And I would say we just were ranked the top state for quality of life recently, and we're very proud of that ranking as well. So sometimes these studies come out, we have to dig deeper. But Senator Kaine is the one who actually spoke to our workforce conference and made some of those observations about that one particular study ranking Virginia low for workers. Nicole, I know we have a couple of other chamber people that are on, and if Connie is available, we'd love to hear from her, but if not, who else do we have that would like to say a few words?
Yes, so next up we would have Danielle Fitzhugh, who's President and CEO of the Chesterfield Chamber. And Danielle, I've just promoted you, so you should be able to unmute yourself, turn your camera on if you're willing, and address our attendees.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Barry. Echo a lot of the comments that my colleague to the north of us, Brian, said, and then of course our County Economic Development Director, Garrett. So it certainly is a privilege to be with this group, and thank you, Barry, for asking me to serve on the Blueprint team as well at that level as well. Our county is committed to being open. We've been so through these last 15 months, and our chamber has supported our businesses in helping them do business. As we look forward through the next year or two, much like the survey echoed, infrastructure, broadband, and some of our rural points in the county are important. How we pay for those so it's not as much of a burden to our business community who have suffered so much during this past year is important. So we just want to keep in mind that the needs are great still. We still have infrastructure needs that we have. We also have education improvements that we want to see put in place. And then of course, as many of you have mentioned, staffing for our businesses. So those are all on the sort of top three and in no particular order of importance. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for your leadership and partnership and serving on our advisory board. I really appreciate it, and we'll continue the conversation. Nicole, I know you're keeping track of the Q&A and the hands and email. Who would we like to call on next?
Yes, so if anybody else would like to provide remarks, please feel free to just use the raise your hand feature. We have a lot of questions in the Q&A, so while we're waiting for some hands raised, I'm going to go ahead and read the next question here. Someone had asked, this may be tangible to the main topic, but many of us are recognizing the value of being able to conduct official business versus virtual or hybrid environments. This is true both within Region 4 and when conducting business across the regions. Is there any consideration to asking the executive branch to consider allowing that as an option to remain in place for when the state of emergency is lifted?
It's a great question. I would certainly love Mark to chime in on this, but Mark, what I'm hearing is that going back to 5 days a week and 50 hours in the office probably is not in the near future for most employers, and you're a pretty significant employer. How has this changed? What are you hearing from your HR people, and how would you respond to that?
Sure, I'll be glad to chime in on that. So interesting, because construction was considered essential through the entire pandemic, everyone in our field forces continued to work. So we continued working through most of this period, although on a stagger schedule in the office where we could work from home. We reopened the office fully, and I would say 90% of our people are back. Those that are not back are those that feel there is some risk to them, and we honor that potential risk and find ways to work with them. The corollary to that is, as we work with many of our clients, they are trying to figure out how many people are coming back, what does that workplace need to look like, how much space do we need, and a number of other things. It is probably the most talked about thing right now in our industry is what does office space look like going forward? And I think you're going to see a wide range of reactions. There are some companies, they are back, thrilled to be back and will continue to be back. And there are others that are taking a appropriate and much more cautious approach to all of this. And I think we're going to see a hybrid of things going forward without a doubt. I think we will see more. We certainly have the ability now to work from anywhere just about, but it's finding the way to balance the company culture, the communications, and the things that you need to do. That's very different for every company. So I think we're going to see quite a smattering.
And I think the marketplace is going to do more than legislative initiatives in this space. At this point, the governor recognizes that the marketplace is going to have to work in terms of the 100,000 plus employees for the Commonwealth. That'll be something I anticipate the governor and as one of the largest public employees, obviously, and those in the state government that need to put forward some guidelines for employees. Let me ask Nicole if there's someone else that would like to ask a question or chime in about the regional priorities.
Yes, absolutely. So first, we're going to go ahead and let me promote you to a panelist at Milan Tron with the Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce. Milan, I just promoted you to a panelist, so you should be able to unmute yourself and address everyone.
Hi, welcome. Good to see you.
Hi, are you speaking to me? I'm so
yes,
sorry.
Yes, Milan. Yeah, I can see you and hear you. Please feel free to share. You're
my
on the screen. You're in a room full of a lot of people.
Yeah,
or that's your
Northern
background.
Virginia.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's Northern Virginia. But in any way, I appreciate Mark's statement very much and your inputs on the legislative aspect of what's going to happen in the workplace. People are coming back. This is such a transition time as we are planning events for the next year. But I do have a question for you, Barry, and I would say, hopefully that I represent one of the diverse statewide chambers or local chambers that are from the diverse communities that are being more increased in Region 4. With the partnership that the Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce and other minority groups have been working with the chamber more closely since COVID pandemic, do you see a difference in the engagement of various people in diverse communities with the business and the regions overall? And how do Blueprint Virginia as a document and a working plan will be more engaging more people from diverse, because the diverse immigrants make up about 60% of the small businesses. So that's my question.
Okay, thank you again for joining us. And it's an excellent question. And I would say, based upon the presentations we've heard across the Commonwealth and based upon the priority being workforce and talent, I believe our blueprint will emphasize the need for inclusion and the need for equity in all aspects of our populations. We can't leave any group out. We need every group and every individual in the stream of commerce to help fill the opportunities before Virginia employers today. So I really thank you for being here today. I know Michelle Hajour with the Hispanic Chamber, and we've also partnered with the Black Chamber in Northern Virginia. We have the Metropolitan League here, as well as the Urban League in Hampton Roads. We have been more this year than any other fortunate to build bridges with these other organizations that represent a critical part of our economy. And we would welcome suggestions from people on this call and opportunities to engage, but we very much think this blueprint will emphasize more than any other the importance of equity as we move forward. Nicole, I know we have a few more people waiting and we have a little bit of time, so let me ask you who we should call on next.
Yes, absolutely. So I think our next guest will be a familiar face, our past chair, Paige Clay. Paige, I have made you a panelist, so you can go ahead and turn your camera on and address our crowd. Jeff, I will let you know that you're going to be next, and then Teddy Elliott. For those that have been putting questions in the Q&A, if we don't get to your question during the discussion, we will follow up on that as well. So Paige, I'll defer to you.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you. And thanks
for
your chairmanship last year. You were our official blueprint and COVID chair. The remote working continues.
You can tell I'm back at the office.
I see you in Richmond. I know.
Capitol behind me.
I see the buildings.
Thank you all for being on the panel today. I did want to delve a little deeper into infrastructure. I think it's important, and I wanted to understand our folks' concerns about bridges. And we have a lot of bridges, and I didn't see that explicitly held out. We talked about water and sewer, et cetera, and infrastructure. And I heard some stats where, the average bridge needs to be replaced in under 50 years. And at the rate we're going to replace bridges, it'll be like 140 or 150 years. So I just wanted to see if that was part of our plan, if we could make sure that was, more explicit in the infrastructure piece.
That's a great question, and I'm going to ask Mark to chime in on it from GO Virginia Region 4, but I would say from a statewide perspective, I know a number of regional economic groups getting together to put forward meaningful projects with this federal infrastructure bill being contemplated in Washington. So we expect and hope that a new federal infrastructure bill will come forward on a bipartisan basis, Paige, and I think the time is very near that could be announced. And if so, we need to be ready. We need to be ready as a region. We need to be ready as state to have near-term opportunities for that infrastructure. But let me ask Mark if you could chime in relative to Region 4, and has that been something you've looked at in terms of infrastructure?
Thanks, Barry, and thanks for the question, Paige. It is a great question. Our infrastructure needs certainly go about not only in our roadways, new interchanges where we need them, upgrades to the port area, a number of things as we look at this region, but the entire infrastructure is aging and absolutely needs to be addressed. I don't know that I have specific data about the bridges specifically, but it is certainly something we can take a look at in Region 4 and work with our new Transportation Authority and with VDOT, perhaps put some metrics around that and see where we need to go. But I think it's a great question.
Thank you. You know, I think we always have to worry about the lives of our citizens, and I'd hate to be one of those states where bridges collapse. You know, and it just seems to always get thrown to the back burner. So,
well, this new infrastructure package certainly creates some funding opportunities that are needed from a federal level, which the interstate system certainly would fall under. But our state also is enjoying a surplus. And so perhaps between a couple of those buckets, we can tackle some of these challenges while the opportunity's here.
thank you. I really appreciate it, and appreciate all of your work on the committee. So thank you.
Certainly.
You guys have a great day. Good job.
Thank you for
Thanks, Kate.
participating. Nicole, who did you mention that would be next?
Absolutely. So Jeffrey Gallagher is going to be next. While we're transitioning him to a panelist, I wanted to give another question in the Q&A for everyone to react to. It says, what incentives can be given to encourage more companies to actively take in apprenticeships, internships, and other work-based learning opportunities to help the workforce training for skills development? I think this is something everyone may want to react to, but I will make a note that we have partnered with Chev and the Virginia Talent and Opportunity Partnership to address this specific issue. I'll put a link to our website in the chat, but I'll defer to you, Barry, and our panelists to react to that.
Yeah, and thank you. And great question. And Monica and Garrett would love to hear from you as well on this, what experience you all may have in this area. I will share broadly, our polling has indicated about 70% of our employers want to hire someone that has had some form of industry experience and work experience in their field. Unfortunately, the same polling shows only about 10% of our university graduates or community college graduates has that experience. But Monica, I'll call on you first to react to that, and maybe your company has a program, and then Garrett as well. And then we'll get back to the Q&A unless Mark also wants to chime in.
Yeah, we absolutely have a program, and it's growing. Focused specifically on internships, certainly healthcare, the healthcare industry, technology supporting healthcare is one that requires a lot of skill, a variety of skill, and really broad application. So our internship program is growing. Even during the pandemics, I know some companies stepped back and said a virtual internship wasn't something that could be helpful and utilized, but we maintained it during the pandemic, and now we have a hybrid approach to our internships this year and look forward to growing it in the future, and would really encourage additional discussion among the business community of kind of what's working, what's not, to make sure that we are providing those opportunities to the students.
Thank you for that and for your leadership. Garrett, I'll just give you a chance to chime in. I know it's not necessarily in the bullseye, but you have to hear it from your employers in Chesterfield.
No, I would like to concur with what Monica says. We focus primarily on the internship opportunities from our high schools, and they are very productive. We do, because we have a lot of direct foreign investment, we do have companies that are familiar with the apprenticeship type of program. It's very successful for a small group of manufacturers in the county. What we are trying to do is get those companies to talk to the other companies about how an apprentice program works, and let them learn about the success. I think in all of our workforce programs, the problem we have is letting our students know and marketing the opportunity of the jobs we have. It's a fill the funnel problem, and then it's also making our industries understand how the system can work for them. It's a communications and a marketing problem, and always a funds problem. But it's we need to get the kids focused in the right direction, and we need to make the industry understand more clearly how that works.
Thank you both. Mark, I don't want to put you on the spot about your company, but maybe if not your company, your industry, it has to be something you've thought about given your industry. What's your industry doing about internships and work-based learning, or your company if you have a plan?
Yeah, no, it is a regular part of what we do each and every year. We currently have 12 interns this summer from a variety of colleges around the state. that work with us in trying to understand if this is the right field for them, or more importantly, maybe they're just advancing their individual interests and knowledge and where they may want to work. I think there's two parts to an internship program. Part of it is paying it forward. If you have ever been the beneficiary, as I was, of being an intern, then you want to give that back because you realize how valuable it is to the student. But from the industry perspective, it's highly valuable to engage these students and show them, if you will, what the real world looks like so they can begin to make very conscious choices. And so many of the organizations in the greater Richmond area are doing that. We have, through the Chamber, through other things, we are doing internship programs, which we think is highly valuable. And I would encourage those of you on the call who are not doing it, do so. It's a free look at great young talent, and we learn as much from them as I think they may learn from us. So I think it's a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, I do want to thank you for that. And thanks for your company's leadership. Brian, with ChamberRVA, would you like to chime in before we move on to another topic?
Yeah, I know you got a lot of things to cover, but I want to just mention we did receive a SHEV grant recently in cooperation with VCU to actually look at this model a little deeper. To Garrett's point, we're all doing a little bit, but how do we get it to scale? And that's both for four-year graduates, but also for those in the CTE pathways. We all want to see get more access to jobs. So we're going to be looking at that and working with anybody on this call that would be interested. Please contact me or our team as we look to make sure internships and apprenticeships get to be much more scalable than they are now.
That's great. Thanks for your work in that. Nicole, let me turn it back to you. I know we have a lot of questions as well.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So we're going to do speaker question. And Jeffrey, thank you so much for being patient. We'd love to recognize you now. Jeffrey Gallagher, you are a panelist. You can unmute yourself, turn your camera on, and address our attendees.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you so much.
Okay, there we are. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the time. I want to give just a little background on the priority that was mentioned by Mark in the region of the Advanced Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Cluster. And note that its rising to the top of priorities was a result of a wonderful effort across the community over the last 9 months of hundreds of individuals and over 50 of our major stakeholders in the strategic planning process, funded by a GO Virginia ECB grant to VCU College of Engineering. How can the region maximize the potential of the technology coming out of VCU and the companies that we're building down in Petersburg? And a couple of things that don't normally come to the top of this. One is that there's a pervasive impact that's potential for the region. There's a base enrichment of R&D, there's a base of manufacturing in Petersburg, and there are opportunities to build supply chain in all the counties and cities. And so it's something that's going to impact the entire region with high-tech, high-wage jobs. The second, in advanced manufacturing of pharmaceuticals, it's well known nationally that 75% of the jobs go to high school plus skills workers and are not just the PhD or manufacturers. So here's an opportunity to bring real equitable economic growth to the region and its many communities. And it's something that really recommends the opportunity. Another rarely acknowledged thing, but something that the state has been yearning for, is this direct link between the technology coming out of our public science universities and industry. This technology that's allowing the growth of this new paradigm busting manufacturing comes out of VCU and the College of Engineering there. And it will be continued to be propelled by that and by the pioneer firms that have located now in Petersburg through the $500 million BARDA grant. So it's rises out of our region. It's going to have impact here, and then the potential to impact the entire state, to fill in the supply chain, to recruit the talent of the young people from all over and keep them here, and then the global spotlight that will shine on the Commonwealth because of what they're going to accomplish.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for your comments and your insight into the history of that recommendation. We're glad it's in there, and it'll be in our blueprint, I assure you. We have time for just a couple of more speakers, and I do want to save a minute for our chair, Alan Witt, to give some closing comments. So who do we have next, Nicole?
Yes, so Michelle Sejour with the Virginia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce will be next, and I think this is a question he may want to react to as well. So I'm going to ask one question from the chat for everyone. There were several questions, so I'm going to bundle them together as far as the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation and the Virginia Promise Partnership. Is it something that's a priority to chambers and business? Is it something that's going to be included in Blueprint? I know that we do have a representative on the Promise Partnership initiative, and obviously a great relationship with the foundation. So I'll turn to Barry and any others that would like to react on that. And then Michelle, will turn to you.
Yeah, Michelle, great to see you. And just to respond to those early childhood is a priority of the business community. A number of our advisory and steering committee members are on the Early Childhood Foundation. And I will say childcare is actually one of the 3 issues impacting the workforce right now. One is some people still concerned about the virus, but 2, this extended unemployment, which we need to get. We would like to see Congressman Spanberger's bill go forward, which would be very creative and helpful. But 3, we really need to see us address that. And early childhood education is far more than childcare, but we are going to have early childhood education as part of a priority. But we do need to solve the childcare problem too. Michelle, good to see you. Welcome. And always, you can chime in on any topic you'd like.
Well, one thing I did want to talk about is education, because I think it's such a priority to make sure we have the workforce for tomorrow. But one thing that, especially in Richmond Public Schools has 65% dropout rate among the Latino community. This is a tragedy that's happening, and we need to address it. And it's a high dropout rate across the state, but specifically Richmond Public Schools has the highest in the state. And it's just a tragedy. We need these workers. We need these workers for the workforce. We have a program called ChamberRVA to help place people into jobs. And we work into the schools with a program called Passport to Education. We're also working with several colleges and universities like Virginia Union. But I just want to make a note that we can't let people fall through the cracks in the school systems. This is our future job pool for tomorrow.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the good work. If you send us that information, we'll send it to everybody. Michelle, happy to share that more broadly. Thank you so much. I think Todd Haymore has joined us as well. Todd, thanks for your vice chairmanship in this role and for Go Virginia. And Nicole is going to promote you. And thanks for all your past public service, as well as your leadership in the business community. Maybe I made a promise I can't keep.
Todd, you are a panelist, but while we're waiting on you, let me go ahead and promote Becky McDonough, who's also a chamber executive from the region. So Becky, you can unmute yourself, turn your camera on, and address our attendees. And Todd, you're welcome to follow.
Good morning, everyone. Becky McDonough here, Hopewell, Prince George Chamber of Commerce. I really think this has been incredibly well done. And one thing I'd like to comment on, since Go Virginia and regional collaboration is one of the really pivotal points of the blueprint, I'd like to thank Jeff Gallagher and the folks with Flow and AMPAC and for including folks like myself in Region 4 as they unveiled the pharmaceutical project in Petersburg. It's a great example of how we can use communication platforms like this to make everyone understand what's going on and to feel a part of it and to begin connecting others to the project. So kudos to everyone who had a part in making that so inclusive. On another subject, I would like to say that in the southern part of Region 4, we hear a lot about RVA 757 and the Hampton Roads conversation with Richmond. And I have to say, we feel a little bit out of the loop. And I don't know exactly what we could contribute if we were brought into the conversation, but if there are ways that we can participate, productively, let us know. And I think I would be speaking for the chambers in the region as well as a lot of the major employers.
Yeah.
Hey, Barry, if I, yeah, I say, Barry, if I could,
comment on that, please.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. Becky, thank you for that comment and for bringing that to our attention. We have a very open door and policy on the involvement of all the localities between the Hampton Roads area and the Richmond area. I actually think Prince George has a lot to offer when we talk about logistics, when we talk about sites, when we talk about infrastructure. You all are in a perfect spot to be a very valuable contributor to that conversation. And so I will make sure that we include you in those conversations between GO Virginia itself, our board, but also John Martin at SIR, who's been assisting and helping to lead that initiative. We'll make sure it gets to his attention, and we look forward to you participating in that.
That would be super. And then my only other comment today is we talk about logistics and distribution centers, and look at the growth of that in Virginia. And in our region, I have to say that sector, they have been considered essential workers during the pandemic. And so they had to pivot faster than a lot of people to actually continue bringing us our food and our automotive parts and our home goods and, that sort of thing. And right now that sector is tired. And I think I can speak for every one of them in the Tri-Cities area they're desperate for workers. They're worried about the health of their workers, to talk about what Monica said, about the importance of health, the health of the workers. People are having to work extremely long hours. They're away from their families more than they would like to be. There's still an underlying concern over future exposure. And then you have companies that respect people who can't come back to work because of their own personal situations. So I just would I don't have an answer for this, but I would like to see us creatively approach how to make sure that the distribution sector in the Commonwealth might be looked at separately, as what we can do to support them and in the future.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you for sharing that and bringing that to the surface, both in terms of connectivity to some of the collaborative efforts regionally, and also that industry, along with our healthcare workers, have done an amazing job. And we're very, very grateful to them. And we'll give that some additional thought. I'm extending this just a few minutes because I want to get Todd. Todd is one of our board members, Todd Haymore. And Todd, if you're on, I'd like for you to say a few words, and I'll introduce Alan to speak on behalf of the board.
Barry, yeah, thank you. And I will be very brief. I just wanted to commend, obviously, my colleague and chairman, Mark Horgan, for presenting on behalf of Region 4, and also Wilson, Floor, and everybody back at Region 4 headquarters for helping put this together. Mark, I thought you did an outstanding job of capturing everything that is going on and the dynamics of Region 4. And it's exciting to be a part of it. And then Barry, to you and the entire chamber team and staff for including all the regions of GO Virginia to be a part of this. I think it was really important. I thought back on as we were putting GO Virginia together in the 15-16 era of state government, and the idea of regional collaboration, regional cooperation, working together for the betterment and creating new jobs and opportunities, higher paying jobs and opportunities, and tying this into the Blueprint Virginia scope is really, really important. And I've heard that from friends and colleagues in other regions. So thank you all as well. And looking forward to seeing some more of this, particularly as we continue our work on this committee level of putting together Blueprint Virginia in the future. So thanks again for everyone participating as well today.
Thanks, Todd, for that partnership that you bring to us as well. I want to recognize Alan Witt. Alan is President Emeritus of PB Mayors. He's also a sitting chair at Christopher Newport Joe Luter School of Business, and want to thank Alan for serving as our chair and recognize him for a few minutes. And in addition to Paige Clay, we also have John Arena at Huntington Ingalls on, and Woody Fowler, CEO of Williams Mullen. And I want to thank Lee Hanna. We've already acknowledged her from Cigna. Chris Lloyd has joined us, who chairs our Business Climate Industry Council and co-chairs it with Todd. And Jeff Ricketts, I know from Anthem, is on, Alan, as well as Gary Thompson from Thompson Consulting. And I also want to thank Renee Haltom at the Federal Reserve, who's also going to be serving on our advisory board. We've had a great turnout today, Alan. If you'd like to give us just a few closing remarks before I adjourn us. Thank you, Alan, for being here as well and for your service as our chair this year.
Well, Barry, thank you. As Barry said, my name is Alan Witt. It's my honor to serve as chairman of the Virginia Chamber Board of Directors, especially this year as we are developing Blueprint Virginia 2030. Ed Bain spoke early on. I do want to continue to thank him for his leadership in this blueprint process, as well as Mark, Garrett, and Monica for your leadership and participation today. And for all of you that ask questions, this would not work if it wasn't a participative session. And for those who spoke, Brian and Danielle, Milan, Jeffrey, Michelle, Todd, and Becky, and of course, Paige Clay, who I don't get to see often enough these days due to this pandemic. Discussions like these are important to ensure the voices of the members of the business community throughout the Commonwealth are represented in Blueprint Virginia 2030. And I appreciate the opportunity, Barry, that you've given me today just to speak with you all for a few minutes and give you a couple observations. As we've seen from the preliminary results of today's survey, the availability of a well-trained and educated workforce remains a top concern, and for good reason. Companies need people with the right skills to help them grow, thrive, and prosper. We can continue to support our future workforce through a deliberate focus, creating closer connections between the business community and jobs throughout the education system. And some of these important points include greater access to internship opportunities and other work-based experiences, development of career exploration tools, and business involvement in the design of education and training programs. So on behalf of the Virginia Chamber Board of Directors, again, I'd like to thank all of you for being with us today in an effort to foster greater regional cooperation throughout this Blueprint Virginia 2030 development process. So thank you all for being with us. Barry, back to you.
Thank you, Alan, and thanks all our board members. Thanks for our panelists today, and thanks for all of our participants as we continue to develop our Blueprint Virginia 2030 plan. Mark your calendars for December 3rd. We all hope to be in person in Richmond, where we present and unveil the details of our blueprint to the governor-elect. Thank you all for what you're doing to make Virginia a prosperous place to live and work. And with that, we'll stand adjourned, and we'll send you all copies of our PowerPoint presentations today. Have a great day and the rest of your summer.
Great job, Barry. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.